Welcome back to another Scary Night Tales. In tonight's story, a man finds himself in a creepy apartment where the rules seem off. What happens when fear takes over and the unknown knocks at his door? But before we dive into this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this story. Let's begin. The apartment complex I live in has scary rules that the tenants must follow. I had a nasty breakup with my girlfriend a while back, and although we lived in an apartment together, she stood as the owner of it, so I had no choice but to move out. Thankfully, a good friend of mine allowed me to stay at her place until I could find my own crib. Since I only wanted a rental apartment, my choices were limited. There is a low supply and high demand for rental apartments in my city. After going through several that was too expensive for me, I found a vacant one in the outskirts of the city. It was a large 3-room apartment on the 4th floor with a view over the woods, and the rent was very low. I immediately applied, and within a couple of hours I got a reply that I could have it. I deeply regret moving here, and now you may wonder why I haven't left. It's because the contract and the rules forbids me from leaving. The contract is for 1 year, and honestly, I don't expect to survive until it expires. The same day as I moved in, I found a letter addressed to me from the company that rented it. I opened the letter and took out the paper which said, "Rules for living in the apartment complex. Regardless if you are home or away, your door must always be locked. You do not want to have unwanted guests in your apartment. Should you forget to lock the door after leaving, do not enter your apartment when you return. Call our support for instructions on how to proceed. 2. It is not forbidden, but we do not recommend leaving the apartment between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Some entities like to roam the building during the night and does not take lightly to intruders. This only applies if you want to leave your apartment and not if you return to it. 3. If you leave the apartment between that time, always carry a flashlight, a bag of salt, and holy water. The flashlight will repel the shadowy figures you may see. Should you hear footsteps behind you and no one is there, use the salt to create a salt ring and do not break it until the footsteps has stopped. The holy water is for any people you may encounter. To make sure it is people, spray it on them. Should they react to it, immediately run back to your apartment and stay there until 5 a.m. If they do not react, it's safe to proceed. The basement should never be visited under any circumstances between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. If you should ignore this rule, then there is a high risk that you may never leave it. 5. If you are in the basement at any given time, with exception to Rule 4, and hear growls behind you, ignore them and calmly walk to the exit and do not run, because the thing that makes the sound will catch you if you do. On Mondays and Thursdays, your doorbell will ring exactly 3 a.m. Approach the door as silently as you can and look through the peephole. There will be an old man with a fancy hat outside. Invite him in and politely ask him if he wants food. It doesn't matter what food you give him. After he has finished the food, he will thank you for your kindness and leave the apartment. Do not refuse him, because if you do, then you will die. 7. Should objects in your apartment move between locations, pour the liquid we have provided you with on them, and it will stop. The liquid is located underneath the sink in the kitchen. No harm will be done to you if you fail to do this, but there is a risk that some objects will never be seen again. 8. Do not stare into the mirror for longer than 5 minutes at a time. Should you forget about this rule, your own reflection will remain and slowly make its way out of it. If this happens, smash the mirror before it can escape. 9. Every apartment has an intercom with the name of those who lives here and the number of their apartment. If you wish to visit any tenants, dial them and ask for their permission to visit. Should the doorbell ring and a tenant ask to come in, do not answer them and remain silent. It's not a tenant, as they would never come visit you before calling first. 10. If you receive mail that is not addressed by the company emblem, do not touch it with your hands. Use a glove or something else to pick it up and immediately burn it. Should you pick it up, the mailman will visit you the next day, and trust us, you do not want to meet him. 11. If the light in your apartment turns off between 9:15 p.m. to 9:20 p.m., find a place to hide until they have been turned on again. Do not worry, The creature won't find you as long as you are in hiding. 12. Any visitor, meaning visitors outside tenants, must also follow the rules. If they break them, then both you and they will suffer the consequences. 13. Do not try and leave or move out until your contract expires. If you try and do this, then no matter where you go or who you visit, you will always return to your apartment. I read through the rules repeatedly. Luckily for me, I've read about rules such as this on Reddit and know the seriousness of breaking them. However, it doesn't mean they didn't scare the living hell out of me. To calm myself down, I made coffee and went to watch TV. A few moments later, I heard the doorbell ring, which made me jump and spill out my coffee, but somehow, I managed to stay quiet. "Hello?" a female voice said. But I didn't answer and sat quietly on the sofa, shaking with fear. "Anybody home?" the voice continued, now much louder and menacing. But I remained quiet. "I know you are home. Let me in," it said now, in a demonic voice, and started to bang on the door, with each bang having enough force to knock the door down. But it held. This continued for 10 minutes until it stopped. After a couple of more minutes, I got the courage to go to the door and look out the peephole, and nothing was there. I sighed and went back to the sofa. I looked at the clock and it said 9:14 p.m. Remembering the rule, I went to my wardrobe as a precaution to have a chance to hide, since my encounter with 9 had me shaken to the core. As it turned 9:15, the lights went out and I entered it and covered my mouth. I did not see what entered my apartment, but it was big based on the heavy footsteps it made. I could hear it sniffing around, and it took every amount of my willpower to stay quiet. It then left, and the lights were turned on again. I carefully exited the wardrobe and sighed as the creature had vanished. After that event, I could not go to sleep, so I decided to watch TV, but somehow fell asleep and woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing. I looked at my phone and it said 3 a.m. This made me wide awake, and I approached the door with trembling steps and looked through the peephole. My entire body froze as I saw the old man with the fancy hat. I took a few seconds to collect myself and opened the door. I would have expected a ghastly-looking figure, but he looked like a normal person. He appeared to be in his mid-70s with pale complexion, messy gray hair, dark-colored eyes, and wore a nice black tuxedo with a purple tie. However, I knew this wasn't an ordinary person because every cell in my body screamed danger. The old man looked me up and down and said in a friendly voice, "May I come in?" "Of course, sir," I replied as friendly as I could. The man thanked me and entered the apartment. He took off his hat and put it on the shelf and went to the dinner table and sat down. As I closed the door and locked it, I said to the man, "Can I offer you some food?" And he replied, "Yes, I would like that." I nervously went to the kitchen to put together a dish, and while I did, the man stared at me without blinking, which sent shivers down my spine. I served him some chicken with rice and looked nervously at him as he ate my meal. After he was finished, he stood up and walked towards me and said, "Thank you for the meal and your kindness," before grabbing his hat and walking through the door. He literally passed right through the door. After he had left, I started hyperventilating, and it took several minutes for me to calm down. I thought in the morning after work, I will go shopping for protective material against supernatural shit. Not long after that, I fell asleep from sheer exhaustion and awoke to my alarm clock. The following couple of days, nothing paranormal happened to me, and I did not leave my apartment during the evening and night. But I bought several protective charms during my lunch break. However, the next day when I came home, I saw a letter lying on the doormat and bent down to grab it. But before I could do so, I remembered Rule 10. If you receive mail that is not addressed by the company emblem, do not touch it with your hands. Use a glove or something else to pick it up and immediately burn it. Should you pick it up, the mailman will visit you the next day, and trust us, you do not want to meet him. I put on a glove and picked it up, and I'm glad I did, because it did not have the rental company's logo on it. I went and grabbed a lighter and set it on fire. And when I did, it released a horrifying scream that made me drop it, and I looked on in horror as blue flames consumed it. As I prepared my dinner, I couldn't find the frying pan in the kitchen locker. I remembered Rule 7. Should objects in your apartment move between locations, pour the liquid we have provided you with on them and it will stop. The liquid is located underneath the sink in the kitchen. No harm will be done to you if you fail to do this. But there is a risk that some objects will never be seen again. I took the bottle containing the liquid underneath the sink and searched for it. I found it in the bedroom on the bed and poured the liquid on it. But nothing happened, to my surprise. After making dinner and browsing Reddit and YouTube, I decided to take a shower before heading to bed. As I stood in the shower, the lights went out, causing me to freeze before snapping out of it and immediately turn the shower off. Rule 11. If the light in your apartment turns off between 9:15 p.m. to 9:20 p.m., find a place to hide until they have been turned on again. Do not worry. The creature won't find you as long as you're in hiding. I didn't dare to move and thanked myself for remembering to put up a shower drape. I heard the creature walking around and sniffing the apartment. It eventually left, but I waited a couple of more minutes before turning the shower on again, and luckily nothing happened to me. As I stepped out of the shower, I froze in fear and cursed at myself for my stupidity, as I remembered I did not lock the door after entering and finding the letter. I rushed butt naked out of the bathroom to the door and locked it, and prayed nothing had entered. I quickly went to put on an amulet I bought, and as I did, it started to burn on my chest. Shit, I thought as my fight and flight mode activated. I rushed to grab my waist bag, yes I have one, and put my phone, a flashlight, a bag of salt, and a bottle of holy water in it, and grabbed the keys as I left the apartment and made sure to lock it. I looked at the phone and it said 11 p.m. How is this possible, I thought, as there is no way in hell that it has been nearly 2 hours since I stepped out of the shower. Rule 3. If you leave the apartment between that time, always carry a flashlight, a bag of salt, and holy water. The flashlight will repel the shadowy figures you may see. Should you hear footsteps behind you, and no one is there, use the salt to create a salt ring and do not break it until the footsteps has stopped. The holy water is for any people you may encounter. To make sure it is people, spray it on them. Should they react to it, immediately run back to your apartment and stay there until 5 a.m. If they do not react, it's safe to proceed. I walked through the hallway, yes, butt naked, and every hair on my body stood up and I felt uneasy. I saw 3 shadowy figures, but used the flashlight on them, and as the rule said, they vanished. When I entered the staircase, I heard footsteps behind me. I cursed and took the bag of salt and poured a ring around myself. I don't know how long I stood there, but I kept my eyes shut as I heard laughter and screaming around me. Apparently, they left that out from the rule. It eventually stopped, so I broke the ring and went on my way, and luckily, I saw no people. After leaving the apartment complex, I ran to the nearest 7-Eleven store, which was 15 minutes away on foot. When I arrived to the 7-Eleven butt naked, the staff was in simple words surprised and horrified, but I managed to convince them to let me in by saying I was robbed. They gave me some clothes and allowed me to use the staff room as they called the police. After calming down, I decided to call the company support and inform them what has happened. As I sat in the 7-Eleven staff room, I called the company support, and this is how the conversation went. Support. This is redacted support. What can we help you with? A female voice said. Me. Hello, this is John in apartment 20. I have a major problem that I require assistance with. Support. You broke Rule 1, didn't you? The woman said, slightly annoyed. John, we will send a team to your apartment. It will take us 2 days to fix things. Until then, you will be provided with a guest room at one of our other apartment complexes. That place has a list of rules that are slightly different from the ones you have. Follow them and you will be safe. Since this is a first-time offense, you will not receive any punishment. We will send a car to pick you up. Me. Wait, what about I begun? But she had already hung up on me. Well, isn't this fucking great, I thought when one of the staff entered and told them the police was here. I told them what I told the staff, and I saw they didn't believe me, but they dismissed it as me being a weirdo. After they had left, I thanked the staff for helping me and went out where a black sedan waited for me. An hour later, I arrived at the guest apartment. It was a 2-room apartment with a kitchen and bathroom. On the bed were a box with my belongings and a letter. I went and picked up the letter which said, "Rules for living in the guest room, apartment. 1. Do not leave the guest room under any circumstances until you receive a call from the company support. 2. Do not look in the mirror in the bathroom at any point. It will take it as an invite. You will feel very tempted to look in it, so our advice is using a blindfold whenever you need to use the bathroom. Should you look in the mirror, then pray the entity takes pity on you. 4. Always place a plate of food underneath the bed before going to sleep. Should you forget about this, then there is a risk you will be the meal. The food is stored underneath the sink. 5. If an old lady by the name of Anna knocks on your door at any point and asks you to help her, ignore her and do not approach the door. She will disappear after 5 minutes. Should you not do so, then you will be dead in the morning. 6. If you hear 3 taps on the window, ignore it as it wants your attention. If you hear 2 taps followed by 3 quick taps, find a place to hide until it is stopped. If you hear a crash while in hiding, it has managed to enter the apartment. Remain quiet as it can only find you if you make a noise. After 3 minutes, it will disappear. 7. If you hear laughter from the ceiling, do not look up. Ignore it, and it will eventually stop. My heart sank after reading the rules. I went from a hellish place to an even more hellish place. I went through my stuff and thankfully all my protective gear was there. I thought about calling the police but dreaded what could happen to them. I sighed and thought I will not break the rules, I will survive. After my little pep talk, I placed out various protective gear, and after I was finished sat down on the couch to watch some TV before falling asleep. My heart sank after reading the rules. I went from a hellish place to an even more hellish place. I went through my stuff and thankfully all my protective gear was there. I thought about calling the police but dreaded what could happen to them. I sighed and thought I will not break the rules. I will survive. After my little pep talk, I placed out various protective gear, and after I was finished sat down on the couch to watch some TV before falling asleep. I jolted awake to both my amulet burning like the sun on my chest and to the sound of 3 taps on the window. And luckily, I had put the drapes over them. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would escape my body. But overcoming the burning pain of the amulet, I managed to remain quiet. It went on for 10 minutes before I heard 2 taps, followed by 3 quick taps. Fucking shit, I thought, and quickly, but quietly made my way to the bedroom and hid in the wardrobe. A few seconds later, the window broke and I heard the most horrifying growl that nearly made me scream, but I managed to cover my mouth. I stood there quietly as the creature roamed the apartment. It eventually entered the bedroom and I saw it through a crack in the door. It looked like a dog, except it had gray scales and limbs with claws that resembled talons, and its face was terrifying, burning red eyes with a wide mouth full of fangs. It searched through the bedroom before disappearing, and as it did, the amulet stopped burning and I exited the wardrobe. When I went back to the living room, the window was fixed and there was no sign that the creature had ever been there. I looked at my watch, and it said 11:15 p.m. Great, only 28 more hours in this place. I went back to the couch, and that was when I heard it. A demonic laughter coming from above me. At the same time, a loud knock on the door. Hello? This is Anna, your neighbor. Could you help me with my groceries? The woman, or whatever the fuck the thing was, said in a surprisingly warm tone. The laugher became louder as the thing at the door said that, and my amulet burned so much, I had to take it off. I looked down and saw it had left a burn mark on my chest. I started to quietly sob and silently muttering, why the fuck do I have to endure this fucking shit? I just want it to end. 5 minutes later, the laughter and knock stopped. As if my body moved on its own, I quickly went and picked up the food underneath the sink and put it on a plate and placed it underneath the bed. Then I fell on top of the bed, and the next I knew, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. Me. "This is John." I stammered support. "This is Teresa from the support. We are finished with your apartment and some of our workers will come and pick you up." I sighed in relief and laughed manically after she had hung up as I realized I had slept for nearly 28 hours. 2 hours later, I sat in the car on my way back to my apartment. I noticed that I had put my amulet in my pocket, and the moment I touched the amulet, it burned my fingers.